And I want to redeem some of that because that remembering is very important. And it's important in ways that get overlooked, and it's important in ways that have not been considered. Memory, remembering, is in fact the ultimate and supreme task of our spiritual lives. It is what we must do to complete the task that I have called throughout my ministry here, growing a soul. So what is a life, I ask you? A life is all that happens in a life. It's like a song or a poem. Its meaning is not fully known until it is over. If our soloist had stopped short of that high note, the song would have been incomplete, would it not? There's a sense of completeness that only comes when we know we have heard not just the last note, but we hear the silence after the last note. The satisfaction of a book, say Moby Dick, comes only when you have finished the last word and you can take it all in. Memory is how we make lives into lives, how we take the episodes, the moments, the fragmentary things, and put them together. To seek the meaning of life may seem ultimately futile, but the meaning of our lives, of our particular lives, this we can do. And finding some sense of that meaning is what memory is for, and of course, it is what old age can do best. Remembering is, as Matthew and I have noted, literally to put together. The opposite of remember is dismember, to take apart. So remembering is to put together, to put back into a whole. Of course, our lives, our souls, are not a seamless whole. They are bits and pieces, as I just said. There are thoughts here and feelings there and memories there. And remembering is how we pull them all together. We look back at a certain point in our lives and we ask, why did we get here? How did we get here? What choices have I made? The roads taken and the roads not taken. We love that poem, don't we? The road not taken. But it's important to know that there's regret at either choice. I could go this way, but only that way. I can't come back and do this one. So at some point we ask, is this the best life I could have lived? And you don't know. You really can't know. Maybe if you hadn't jilted your first girlfriend, maybe if you'd taken that job instead of turning it down, maybe if you had decided to go this way instead of that way. Whole lives have been decided, and you look back from a vantage of 60, 70, 80, or even 90 years, and you begin to see that your life is not one thing but many things, and you try to pull them all together. Victory and defeat, shame, sorrow, and glory. The philosopher and psychologist Erik Erikson says this is the stage where we confront the crisis of ego integrity versus despair. What he means is, do we choose our life, having lived it, still say, yes, that was my life for all it was and all it wasn't. It is who I am. I own it. Versus despair that says, I wish I'd done this. I regret not doing that. I regret doing that. That's the choice we all have to face at some point. Of course, we can face it at any point in our lives, but when you reach the actuarial moment when you know your future is much shorter than your past, you begin to ask those questions in earnest. Is this the life that I want to have? Will I accept who I have been, or will I regret it? You see, the challenge is to find the unity of your life, to find something more than the moment-by-moment experience. Do you all have boxes in your attic, perchance? How many? Too many. But most of us have a mind like those boxes, in segments, a box here, a box there. They're all, if you're lucky, they're all cataloged, but you still can't create a whole out of them, can you? They're only in pieces. But the spiritual task is how to bring them all together, to make it whole, to find integrity. The key to spiritual life is integrity. It is the search we make our whole lives to make our actions and our words, our beliefs and our fears, our longings and our accomplishments into a single whole that is who you are. And I'm here to tell you that the key to going there, whatever your age is, but especially in old age, The key to spiritual power is to move beyond yourself to find yourself. That sounds ironic and paradoxical, but as all spiritual travelers know, it is the paradoxical that frequently has the key. If we wish to remember ourselves, put our lives together, remember ourselves into wholeness, we do it by remembering beyond ourselves, not just you, but you in the world, hearing and bearing not only your experiences, but the memories that you got from others. I'm not an old man, but the only experience I have is my own, so let me give you an illustration. I was born in the 1950s. I have a memory of Dwight David Eisenhower being in the same space. I have just given it to you. It's now in your memory too. My grandfather was born in 1872. I know a man who never knew a telephone or an automobile, whose idea of speed was a steam engine. I've now given that back to you too. It's DNA of the soul. I'm implanting in you the experiences someone else planted in me. Think about all the people you have known, not just the experiences you've had, but the people who gave you your experiences, because growing my soul means remembering them and their souls and their memories with them. I remember knowing a man who fell out of an airplane while training for World War I. He lived. Obviously, I wouldn't have heard about him if he had died. He was training to drop bombs by holding them out the window and dropping them. They weren't good at it, so they flew very low. The man clipped the top of a pine tree. The plane turned over. He fell out and fell through the pine trees. He served in Pensacola, Florida, and joined the Veterans of Foreign Wars. The man's dream ended there, and yet he carried it with him for the rest of his life. And I visited him in his 80s, always wearing a green Loden sport coat, carrying a cane, always with a coat with a jacket and a tie on. I remember him as vividly as I remember my own uncle. I remember the smell of fried dough that my great-grandmother would make when my parents were away on a holiday. Fried dough that she taught us to love because it's nothing but bread soaked in butter and turned into something you shouldn't eat. We all know the feeling. We didn't dip them in sugar like you Northerners do. The richness of the fried dough was sufficient for us. What I didn't know until after I'd eaten it years later was that she used to cook this for miners in the hills of the Sierra Madre because she worked there as a girl. And so I ate the same breakfast that she gave to gold miners and silver miners when she was working there as a girl of the age of 16. I remember the jowly sound of an Eastern shoreman who was my wife's grandfather, a man with cheeks so heavy and who smoked so much that he was barely intelligible, that plus his Eastern Shore accent. I remember being on his front porch when the rain came down and the storm blew rain all over me while I was sleeping on the outside porch. I remember the smell of DDT as the trucks went by, blowing for mosquitoes. Some of you remember that smell too, don't you? And I remember fishing for crabs with my father-in-law in a little rowboat in the brackish waters with the sun beating down, pulling the evil creatures up out because, believe it or not, they're nasty things and they deserve to die and they are delicious.